So, welcome everyone to our very first session, and that's enough from me. So, I will be handing over to Basanti to introduce herself and talk about how we achieve peak performance because how we are ourselves really does impact how we engage others around us. So, I think these will be some great lessons that we can all take away. So, Basanti, over to you.
Thank you very much. And yes, you see the first slide here. Before I bore everyone with who I am, what we do, and how we can optimize your brain, I'd love to find out what you'd like to get out of this session. So if you could just write in the chat for us, and we'll keep a little eye on that while I'll go on talking. And yeah, so my name is Basanti. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Neuroveda by Pathak Yoga. I'm half Indian actually and half German. That's my accent. And I learned yoga from my father when I was 4 years old. So he was Indian. And yoga includes breathing and meditation. Often people just focus on the postures, but it's a much, much wider field. And today I'll be speaking on all things meditation. So what it is, what it isn't, what the benefits are, what types there are. And there'll be a little bit of a practical element to this as well, if you wish to join, but I'm not going to make everyone. Next slide, please, and I'll tell you a little bit about how we, what we do. Thank you. So we've been going for 10 years, and our mission has always been and still is making employees healthier and employers happier by optimizing the workforce and bottom line, and in the process improving staff mental health and well-being, because it's really two sides of the same coin. So it's a win-win. And to this end, we offer bespoke neuroscience-informed programs which focus on solving various different problems that a team or individuals in a team may be dealing with. And these include, but aren't limited to, raising productivity levels, helping with decision-making, improving sleep and energy levels, which then also goes hand in hand with better focus, memory, cognitive function. And we help you become calmer and stay calm under pressure, which is obviously something that most people may need in a job, but also outside of a work environment, and become more resilient. And then our programs also help improve your posture, physical strength, flexibility, and longevity. So there is that focus on the brain as well as your physical health. And we combine this very wide field of yoga with non-yoga services as well, such as sound healing and other meditations and breath work, because obviously not all of those practices will sit within the yogic tradition. Now, maybe let's have a little look what people would like to get out of this. Learning something I had not thought of before. That's very good. I hope I can help with that. How can I meditate with ease when the brain doesn't shut up? We can definitely touch on that. And taking on too many things is a challenge. Stopping politely saying no is something. I can very much relate to that, Chris, as well. Fantastic. Okay. So I think we all have ways that we can improve. We may or may not be aware of what we want to change, or we may know, but we don't know how to get there. And if we do know, then the next step is taking action. So I hope that this talk can help you be inspired. So I want to speak about those things that you can do, what you want to change, and then also give you the tools to do that, or at least in some cases point you in the right direction. So great, let's find out what sits under this label meditation and how we can use that to hack our brain. Next slide, please. So in my experience, and this is why I want to start with this, I want to talk about what meditation isn't, because often people have these misconceptions around meditation, and I want to bust some of these myths because they're very unhelpful, especially to those who've never meditated before. Often people associate meditation with religion or spirituality. And while it can be linked, it doesn't have to be. And for me, it also very much depends on how you define these two terms, because religion, if we're taking two religions that, and I'm talking about a few types of meditations that come from Hinduism and from Buddhism, but both of these religions didn't actually start off as religions. And spirituality, similar, is also one of those where I feel when people say, I don't have a spiritual bone in my body, I don't believe in that sort of thing, they probably don't know how to define spirituality for them. And very often people who are spiritual would also not necessarily know how to define that. So these are two terms, and we sometimes don't do ourselves any favors when we associate something with that. And meditation is such a loaded word that I want everyone to not think about religion or spirituality right now, and really just focus on what meditation could be based on what the brain is. You may also have heard that you should clear your mind during a meditation. And that's one that's also really important for me to kind of step away from, because when I hear clear your mind, I hear stop thinking, don't have any thoughts. And that is a physical impossibility. Our brain is not like that. We have thoughts even when we're asleep. So don't think clear your mind, because it's unhelpful. Think instead, concentrate your mind. That is essentially most meditations for you. Not all meditations ask you to concentrate the mind and let the mind not wander aimlessly, but most meditations focus like that. Focus on concentrating the mind. What meditation also isn't is a feeling. There is such a thing as this wonderful hailed meditative state. It can happen, and when it does, it feels great. It might feel like you're floating. It might feel like you're seeing a light. You might have this out-of-body experience, which is actually something that you can see in the brain. If you're there's something going on in the brain when you have this out-of-body experience. I'll touch upon that later. But we shouldn't chase those highs. It's something similar that what is going on when you have drugs, when you take drugs. And that's also not something that we should chase. But the long-term benefits, and that is the important thing, on your body and on your brain are completely independent from how you feel in the moment. And now if we can move to the next slide, please. So a big reason why people start meditating is obviously for their mental health. It's to de-stress, to reduce anxiety levels and depression. Lots of studies show that meditation can be as effective as medication is, but without the side effects. And that is particularly true for severe medication, severe depression. Then there is heightened performance, which brings me to the title of this talk. So lots of elite sports people, investment bankers, people in high stress jobs meditate or start meditating because it improves your memory, your concentration. It also makes you healthier. So it helps immunity. It decreases inflammation markers in your body from just a few days of practice onwards. And it even slows down your cellular aging. So it's a fantastic thing to do for that reason alone. And another big one for many people is pain management. Some practices, for example, a breathing practice from yoga, from pranayam, called Bhramri pranayam, which is essentially just humming, breathing in and humming out, calms your pain-sensitive nerve cells and lets you create your own painkillers, your own natural opioids. And there is also mindfulness, comes from Buddhism, which helps us to stop evaluating our pain and just feel sensations. So there's two different things that go on. One is calming and creating painkillers. The other one is changing your relationship to the pain. So going from this hurts, I don't like it, and having all of that emotional component there and all of the memory of pain from before, to just feeling the sensation. This burns, this stings, it feels numb. There is something going on in my body and I feel it, but I don't judge it. So next slide, please. Conscious, I've already now mentioned a couple of different meditations here, but I want to sort of just categorize them a little bit. This is just a very arbitrary way. There's no right or wrong way to categorize meditations and the types of meditations, and lots of them sort of weave into each other. But sometimes it helps to just kind of have a look at what types there are. But the first thing to say is there are different types of meditation, and just like with physical activity, the end result of your meditation will also depend on what you do and, of course, how often you practice, right? If you're going into the gym, I mean, I've got that photo of Arnie there. It is a different thing when you're bodybuilding than when you're doing ballet. Everything is great for the body, just like every meditation is great for the brain, but they have different effects. There are awareness meditations. They're all around attention and concentration, for example, zeroing in on the breath, but not really guiding the breath so much as just being aware of it. And then from that comes a mindful observation of other experiences of life. Then there are subconscious meditations, those that target the subconscious mind. Mantra meditations would be part of that, chanting something over and over again or repeating a word over and over again. Then there are conscious mind meditations. The classic one would be a visualization, but even there, you can use visualizations for the subconscious mind as well. There is stress recovery, and that is a big one. Very often these are breath-based because we're working on the level of the soma, the body, rather than the conscious mind, which sometimes gets in the way. But we're using the body and its processes, for example, ridding ourselves of stress hormones rather than thinking ourselves happy. And then there are compassion and empathy meditations. So that is all about cultivating virtuous qualities, changing the architecture of the brain to make us really, as a trait, become more empathetic, for example. So making others feel better, thereby making yourself feel better as well. These types of meditations are also referred to as constructive, and there's deconstructive ones as well, but I won't touch on too many. Some of these, there's categories that weave into each other, like I said. What all types of meditation have in common is that they retrain your attention, and they all lead to a rewiring of your brain. So we have this ability to shape our brain through repeated experiences. And I'm sure we're all very much aware of that. A few decades ago, someone came up with this wonderful term neuroplasticity, and now it's a thing. But even when you think about it, so I've got that term, a violinist versus, so if you're imagining a violinist who continuously does similar motions with their fingers, they will have enlarged areas of the brain that manage that finger work. The longer they play, the greater the size of that brain area. And equally during relatively mindless pursuits, such as scrolling through our phones, or for example, zapping through Netflix, that will also, so neurons can weaken the relevant brain circuitry there. If we're moving on to the next slide, I think that will be quite helpful because that shows a picture of the brain. A very simplified one, I may add. But when we're talking about the brain, it's always good to simplify things because the brain is so complex, and everything that I say is also a simplified version. So now if you're asking yourself what meditation may be the most helpful for me, you may want to think about what you want the outcome to be. That's why I asked at the beginning, what is it that you want out of this as well? But if you're quite self-aware and you know what your strengths and your weaknesses are, or what a certain trait is that you are trying to improve on, that is a great start, because that means you're already in a better position to choose the right regime for yourself. It's just about knowing what it is. So if you don't know, sometimes other people observe things about us that we don't see ourselves. I think we're very much aware of maybe our partner or our best friend or our sibling knowing things, detecting things around us. So sometimes it's good to listen to people who know us very well. But here's a few things that could apply to you. And I'm starting with one that I think probably applies to all of us at certain stages in the year, in our life, in our work life. And that is if you're highly stressed or if you even suffer from burnout. Then a breath-based meditation could be very good for you. So I've said that already. We're working on the level of the soma, so everything that's not your conscious mind. This type of meditation will activate your parasympathetic nervous system, which calms you after a bout of stress. So I'm sure most of us are aware we've got the sympathetic nervous system, that is our stress response. If you're going through stress, whatever it is, a robber chasing you, a wild animal chasing you, a deadline, your boss breathing down your neck and saying, actually, you don't have 2 weeks, you've now got just 2 hours to do this. Actually, really good for us. Stress can be really good for the body, just not over time. But an hour of stress is tonic to the system. After that, not so much. And then we need our parasympathetic nervous system to kick in. If it doesn't, because you're constantly stressed by multiple deadlines, then what you want to do is a breath-based meditation, which then lowers your heart rate, your blood pressure, sugar levels, all of the things that were rising to help you out in the moment, but weren't designed to help you out for long. So then you need to metabolize your stress hormones. That then makes way for our body producing happy hormones and positive neurotransmitters. So think endorphins, serotonin, the stuff that you're creating after a strong workout, like a HIIT class or a run in the park. Our saliva secretion also changes. So that is part of our rest and digest system, where we're secreting more saliva, which then has an effect on the levels of immunoglobulin, suppressor molecules, tumor suppressors. So we see that it's really, really important for us to have that rest and digest state kick in if it doesn't automatically. And while all of that is going on physically and chemically, the brain also reacts. I mean, it's part, the brain is obviously part of this body, but our brain waves go from agitated to calm as well. And over time, with this type of meditation, you will become more reflective, more resilient to stress. Your logical thinking mind, your prefrontal cortex, which you see here and behind the forehead, becomes stronger, and you become healthier as well because of all these wonderful things that go on in your body. But I did say we do a little bit of a practical thing, so I want to break it up here because I've been talking for a while. Let's see if we can notice a change in how we feel before and after, say, a couple of minutes or a minute of just a breathing practice. And if that feels good for you, then that can become your go-to method to relax and get you calm whenever you actually need it, because I'm assuming right now you're not in a very stressed situation because you're just listening. So let's start by bringing the hands to the chest and stomach, and take a deep breath in and sigh out. And then closing the mouth, keeping the mouth closed, keep the hands here maybe, and we'll just try to breathe gentle breaths. So don't think deep breaths, because sometimes when we think deep breaths, we overbreathe. So just gentle breaths. And notice if you can feel your stomach expand as you inhale and fall as you exhale. And then we've got a hand here at the chest as well. Can you feel that the chest is expanding as you inhale and is falling as you exhale? And then I want all of us, because we're so different, we all have lungs, we know that, but we feel the breath in different parts of the body. Some people feel it in the shoulders. Let's try and move the hands to any other part of the body, rib cage, and then the front and the back. You could feel that in the back as well. Depending on how flexible you are, you might go to the shoulder blades there. And just notice if you can feel the whole upper body expanding as you breathe in and sort of collapsing into itself as you breathe out. And then relax the hands. And we'll try to focus on longer exhalations than inhalations now, because that sparks your vagus nerve into activity, which you may have heard of. It's the longest cranial nerve in your body, so linked to your brain and responsible for sending messages to the brain to say, in this case, we're breathing calm breaths, start producing happy hormones, stop producing stress hormones, metabolize those. So exhalations longer than inhalations, because exhalations are a function of your parasympathetic nervous system, so that rest and digest system. So parasympathetic nerves fire when you exhale. When you feel your stomach expand, that is where the lower part of the lungs is getting activated. That all helps that rest and digest response. And inhalations are a function of the sympathetic nervous system. So that gives you focus, stresses you a little bit. Your heart rate rises on the inhale and slows on the exhale. And if we just want to calm ourselves, we focus on longer exhalations and maybe even holding the breath, unless we're pregnant, unless we have blood pressure issues or a heart condition, or it feels uncomfortable to us. And then it takes less than 2 minutes to get yourself from stress response to parasympathetic state, just through the body. So I hope we all feel nice and relaxed now. You can keep breathing like that while I go on. Same slide, really. I've made my life easy and haven't given too many slides, because I just get overwhelmed by too many slides when I listen to someone. Next type of meditation I want to focus on is one that is wonderful if you're suffering from chronic fatigue or insomnia, but also if you just have too little time to sleep. And I think in our world, we're all time poor. And it's just quite helpful to give ourselves a reset and help our body rest without actually taking up too much time. And these types of meditations tend to be for the subconscious mind. So I've mentioned mantra meditations before, where you repeat the same word again and again and again, which becomes sort of a bit hypnotic. And then it could be a hypnosis-based meditation as well. So hypnosis is that state between being fully awake and being asleep. We often associate that with, I don't know, it could be Darren Brown asking you to drink vinegar, or it could be someone else making you run around like a headless chicken or something. But truly what it is just you being in a state where your subconscious mind is very receptive. Children are in that state very much. This is why they are like sponges, and they learn languages better, because that subconscious is really, really powerful and often stands in our way. There is a meditation that comes from yoga, and it's called Yog Nidra or Yoga Nidra. Literal translation is yogic sleep, and it combines very different types of meditation. For example, it has a part in which you're focusing on your breath. It has an awareness meditation part where you're seeking out different sounds that are far away, that are closer, etc. It has a type of body scan in which you're going through your body and becoming conscious of different parts of your body, similar to mindfulness. And then it also has a visualization. It can function in very many different ways, but that's sort of what is part of Yoga Nidra meditation, visualization, where you might be going through a park or on a walk through a mountain or something like that. So that can be focusing on the conscious mind. It can be speaking to the subconscious. And a 45-minute practice of Yoga Nidra can be as effective as 3 hours of sleep, because our sleep efficiency might not be that great. We obviously have different sleep cycles, and not all of them are actually those deep sleep cycles, of course. And that's something that these meditations can help with as well. So Yoga Nidra can not just be helpful in inducing sleep, so good for people who suffer from insomnia. It can also, it changes your brain waves to more relaxed, and that those changes, studies have shown, happen after a couple of weeks. So you're getting the benefits of sleep without actually being asleep. And just in case it hasn't become clear yet, these benefits of meditation are sometimes really, really quick. The reason we go on and on and on is to make them stronger, to manifest them more, to have them, to change the brain lastingly. What else could help? So if you're, another one maybe, if taking sort of stress into the extreme, if you're suffering from anxiety or trauma or both, then a loving kindness meditation may be particularly helpful in addition to calming your body. So loving kindness would be sending loving thoughts to yourself, to your loved ones, but then even to those people that you're in conflict with. Now, that may be hard, but some people find it actually most uncomfortable to send loving thoughts to themselves, more so even than to others and people that they don't like. Just like many of us are quite happy praising someone else, but we're not really that good with saying to ourselves, you did really well, you are great, you are, you know, you did something really good. We're sort of uncomfortable with that. Could be a cultural thing. But yeah, it's a really, really powerful thing. And what this loving kindness practice does as well is cultivate compassion and empathy. I mentioned that because that can be really great in a work environment. So if you imagine you've got a team full of type A personalities, they're all aggressively competitive, they're all the same type of person. And maybe in their job, that is great because that's what their manager wants from them. But then they also work in a team and they clash constantly because of that. So if you have a team that is constantly in conflict with each other, that can, of course, be hindering. So then, to make that team work better together, you'll want to strengthen the relevant neural circuitry that is responsible for empathy and empathetic concern, which this type of meditation does. So what goes on in the brain is that you're helping a connectivity, a functional connectivity, it's called. So a better working relationship, let's call it, between your amygdala and your prefrontal cortex. So your prefrontal cortex, I've mentioned before, I may have mentioned the amygdala as well. So your prefrontal cortex is often called your brain's CEO, your logical thinking mind. And your amygdala is often called your center for stress and emotion. Both of these are very, very simplified. But for the purpose of this, because I've got another 10 minutes, let's leave it at that. So you won't think the same as the other person when you're changing yourself like that, but you'll understand where they're coming from. And that'll help with any collaboration in a team, with any negotiation outside of your own team as well, with clients. And if you're starting a new job and you're negotiating contracts. So good thing to have, to just kind of know where's the other person coming from, putting yourself in someone else's shoes. I've mentioned the amygdala. Many meditations dampen activity in this part of the brain because it's quite overactive in many of us. And that is why it sometimes is demonized, because people say it's a center for stress, it goes off all the time. A loving kindness meditation heightens this type of activity, but it channels it towards something helpful and helps that working relationship within your brain between two very, very essential parts of your brain. So rather than getting unnecessarily stressed by someone skipping the queue at your favorite coffee shop, you'll become more compassionate. So that is also something that can be happening without can't be happening without the amygdala. And many people may need to enhance their feelings of compassion for other people because they may be lacking in that department as well. And then your prefrontal cortex, the logical thinking mind, where everyone is like, yeah, I want more of that. It's not the be all and end all either, because this is also where judgment happens, where we make judgments, where we make decisions, the brain CEO, essentially. But we make judgments about everyone and everything all the time. And we make judgments about ourselves all the time as well. We don't even realize most of the time. We make over 30,000 decisions every single day. And we are extremely self-critical. So one part of our logical thinking mind is called our default mode network. That's actually not shown in this very simple brain picture that I have there. But this part of the brain is called that because we're in it by default, when we're not concentrating on a task. So it's when the background chatter gets louder, when our mind is wandering, when we're daydreaming, when we're having self-obsessed thoughts, and it's not a healthy place for us because it means that we're ruminating. So holding focus is actually less exhausting for the brain and makes us happy, and studies actually prove that. When you concentrate your mind, when you heighten your attention and your awareness, this part of the brain, the default mode network, can shut down so that you lose your inner critic, your sense of self, and even your sense of time. So if you happen to be not even loving your work, but you really dive into your work. It's called a flow state. When you suddenly are so engrossed in your work, that is what happens. Certain parts of your brain are getting shut down in an efficiency exchange to make you more aware and more focused on your work. What this leads to over time is that you'll be less likely to judge yourself and you're less likely to judge others, and instead just see a situation as it is, rather than spinning a narrative. And we all do it. So we don't want to jump to conclusions. And if we can now move to the next slide, actually. So what I've just talked about, what is going on in the brain, is essentially mindfulness. So if you're someone who spends a lot of time in their head, worrying, ruminating, making up stories that have nothing to do with reality, then a mindfulness meditation will be very helpful. So it's a form of self-observation. It comes, like I said, from Buddhism, but John Kabat-Zinn, a molecular biologist, a few decades ago, I think in the 70s, introduced it as a form of pain management. And what we try and do in it is become consciously aware of the present moment without any agenda as to what should happen next. So we're getting rid of past and future. We're simply noting whatever comes to us, any thoughts, emotions, sensory impressions, and we don't react, we just let go. And that's also great because we're not suppressing whatever it is that is in us. We're just accepting, because suppressing is also exhausting and stressful for the brain. So if you're dealing with a conflict with your partner or at work or whatever, and you're trying to guide your mind away from it, chances are that is going to get bigger and bigger because you're not facing the problem, you're suppressing it. How does mindfulness work? And this is where I actually, and I think we've got time. We'll do another little practice here. So we often start a mindfulness practice with focusing on the breath, not just because of all these physical benefits of slow breathing that I've mentioned before, but mainly because the breath is neutral. So if you think about it, we never really think of our breath as something great or amazing or horrible. It's just there, right? It's always there. So it's an easy gateway into observing rather than labeling what we feel as good or bad. So you can already start that and be aware of your breath and just observe the breath. Is it fast? Is it slow? Is maybe the in-breath longer or is the out-breath longer? So just observe a little bit. And from there, we then go to observing the body. You don't have to do that yet. Just stay with your breath. Maybe feel the breath in your nostrils. And we want to do all of that with interest in what is going on in the body, without any frustration. And that's where it becomes really interesting when you, for example, if your shoulder hurts or something, and you just kind of observe what's going on there, and you try to tell yourself and describe to yourself what is going on at this point in your body that may be a bit uncomfortable, and you're shying away from saying it's uncomfortable, I don't like it. and just kind of notice, what is it that I'm feeling? And once we learn not to pass judgment on those sensations in our body, the breath, the rest of the body, our brain then learns to see a situation through the lens, not of our past experiences, but based on just our present situation. So we'll still judge, but much slower and less. And we won't judge based on our baggage, if that makes sense. And that way we'll become much more reflective and calmer, and we make better decisions. And there's a whole host of other benefits to mindfulness as well. So just like a lot of the other meditations that I've already talked about just now, mindfulness improves your attention, your working memory, which isn't the same as your long-term memory. So it's just like, can you hold the information of the moment without it going away? And that makes you more productive. It also prevents this cost of re-entering a task when your mind has wandered. So think about having your phone next to you, for example. And I would highly recommend, don't multitask, it doesn't work. Don't switch tasks. All of these are things that distract us, just like the phone next to us. It erodes our memory skills. It provides us with unnecessary stress for the brain. And yeah, minimizing other distractions like the phone, even if you have it next to you, even if it's off, it has that distracting effect on us. So if you really need to focus on work, put your phone in the other room. And now, because we have a little bit more time left, just listening to the breath rather than guiding it. And I know that is a super hard thing because we are so used to either not being aware of the breath, but when we are aware of it, we feel like we're not breathing properly, like we should be doing something different. I want you just to focus on the breath. And maybe try to notice if you can feel it in your nostrils. And most of the time, it's much easier to feel that on the in-breath than the out-breath, because when we're inhaling, the air is slightly cooler because our body hasn't warmed it up yet. And when we're exhaling, the air is warmer, it's our body temperature, but we may still be able to feel it. And we can close our eyes as well to focus more on what's going on inside of us. That is called that sense of interoception that we're honing. So all these processes in the body that we're mostly not aware of, but we can be. For example, the breath. But then we could try to become aware of our heartbeat as well, maybe even without touching our chest. Notice if there's something going on. Can we notice the heartbeat? Can we count our heartbeats? And can we notice if we're holding any tension in the jaw, maybe? There's anything going on in the shoulders? Maybe notice how we're sitting here, what parts of our body are touching the ground, are touching the chair we're sitting on. And just notice your scalp. Are there any sensations? Nothing has to be good or bad. Might notice tingling. You might also notice that some parts of your body are a little bit warmer than others. Where can you feel cold? Maybe hands and feet for some of us. And that would be the beginning of a body scan, where I would then take you through every part of your body. I have a little bit less time than I thought. So from top to toe, and we just observe how we feel in the body rather than thinking, oh, this feels quite nice, or I really don't like this feeling. So we want to stay in this complete observation, because when you're saying something feels nice, the idea is that the more you feel that niceness, so we seek pleasure, that's a human trait. So the more we want to oscillate towards the things that make us feel good, the more that can lead to addiction. And especially in a world like ours that is so dopamine overloaded, where everything is designed, from us learning a language with an app and the little pings that we get, sparking dopamine in our body. So we do ourselves a favor staying away from that and not judging. whatever happens. And then I think I do have next slide, I do have another slide. Thank you very much. So that is really a last point. And just to sum up, it is not how we feel during a meditation or even after it. It's not those highs that we should chase, and it's not the lows either. So if you feel like you've meditated now every day for a week, but you don't see a change, please don't worry. If you feel like you're not getting anything out of this 10-minute meditation or 20-minute meditation, you don't feel any better or worse, it doesn't matter. It's who you become and how you change the architecture of the brain. And you become a calmer, less reactive, more content, a healthier and happier person as well. You'll have a brain that functions for you in the way that it should. And please cut yourself some slack. We're all different. We don't start with a clean canvas. We don't have enough time to touch on all of this in the slides now, because I do want to have time for a Q&A as well. But it is important to recognize that we all bring different things to the table. Whatever happened to us in our life, we're all adults, but also what happened before we were born. Because we are what our genes are, and we don't start from just nowhere. And you could be that small dog, you could be the big dog. So I'm just giving that as an example. I'm a big fan of dogs, but it really depends for all of us. You can never say, oh, you shouldn't be stressed by this, because stress is such a personal thing. So it all depends on how your brain is wired and what happens to you, what has happened to you in your life. And meditation can help you, but we don't start from the same point. So there's no need to compare yourself. There's no need to get frustrated with yourself. Just do as much as you can. And that is all that we're here for. And that is it. There's one last slide, which has all my contact details on it, but you can, of course, also ask Zina. And yeah, thank you very, very much for listening. If you feel that you or your team could benefit from becoming more productive, healthier, calmer, whatever it is that I can help with, then please get in touch. Like I said, our programs are very, very bespoke. They're really based on us understanding the client in front of us and the individuals in the room on any given day, with that flexibility that lets us determine what the mood of the day is, so that we can really give you what you need rather than just what you want. And if you enjoyed this talk as well, if you think that your leadership team may benefit from hearing more, I also offer these expert talks on various topics around the neuroscience of well-being in corporations as well. Yeah, and now please, questions, fire away.
Thank you so much, Basanti. And I would say one of the reasons that we chose Basanti to deliver this is you very much are into corporate well-being. So although you deliver individual sessions, you also do that kind of corporate organizational sessions. And it's not all about downward dogs. It is about breathing. You do chair yoga. So it very much can be a workplace initiative. So we have got a question in. Are you saying this does not need to be tested? That might be for us, that might not be. Are you saying this does not need to be tested before upgrade? I'm not sure I understand the question, Sam.
I'm assuming that isn't.
I'm assuming that's not for us either. We did have a comment from Lindsay, concentrate, not clear the mind. I've learned something in the last 5 minutes, so that was nice. But have anyone got any questions, or stop sharing the slides? Any questions for Basanti?
Well,
No, I
people
feel
are
quite
thinking
calm.
maybe just, I mean, to wrap up, really just to say, it is, so from my personal experience, I've obviously said I started learning yoga when I was 4 years old from my father. And I kept trying meditation, and it never worked for me. And at some point I just thought, you know what, it's probably just something for old people, just like poetry. I don't get it. And I kept trying again and again, and I actually only got it, and it worked for me, and it helped me when I was I think I was 30 years old. I'm 44 now, so I've been meditating for almost 15 years now. It takes time to find the right meditation, and sometimes it is those preconceived notions that we have that keep us from it. A meditation can just be a breathing exercise. It doesn't have to be this woo-woo thing that we're thinking of. And it can be, so for me, what helped me was I always thought, if I can't meditate on my own, how is it going to help in a group? Then I went with a friend just to support her to this inside meditation group. And I thought, of course, I'm not going to get anything out of this. And lo and behold, it changed the way I looked at things, because suddenly in a group, I felt it worked for me. And what I couldn't do on my own was so much easier in a group. So yeah, try things even if you think they don't work.
Thank you. And we have got Chris, you've got your hand up.
Thank you. It's reminded me to go back to do some things I used to do in meetings. We used to do some breathing exercises, and I can't remember why we stopped. I think it was I backed off it a bit because someone was quite resistant to doing it, and I think I should persist with it. That even with our exec team, we got a better meeting out of the exec team. And they all were very compliant and sat and put their hands and breathed. And it was at that point you said, was it breath is neutral? And it's a gateway into observing other sensations without judgments. I think that's a really profound statement, which I think I'm going to use that as my opening bit to try and get some more breathing exercises in before we start meetings, because it does drop the temperature, not temperature's right, but it does change things an awful lot.
Yeah. Yeah, it is such a powerful thing. I mean, sometimes you really, so I teach in some gyms around London as well. And so those in London may know Third Space, and then come and say hi to me. But it's sometimes very interesting, because obviously Londoners, they tend to be stressed. Lots of people in that environment are these really type A competitive personalities. You sometimes have people come into a room with all their sort of negative energy, but it's never something personal. It's just that they deal with a lot of stuff, and we do. And then after a class, it may be a meditation, it may be a sound bath. The whole energy really changes. And I haven't talked about sound baths at all, and about the physics of it, the actual physics and the vibrations that go on, and how we influence each other through that. But it makes such a difference when you just have this reset of a minute and a half. That is all it takes to just breathe properly, and you let go of the stuff that you don't need, because no one wants to be frustrated, right? No one wants that, but we don't know how to get rid of it sometimes.
Thank you. Lindsay, you've got your hand up too.
So mine was just an observation. Thank you so much for this morning. Really, really insightful. I did do a little bit of multitasking, so I'm going to apologize now because I went onto YouTube and I see that you've got some videos on YouTube as well. So I've just made a little note of those ones, and I'll be going back on those ones as well. So I think, like you say, I think this is for me, it's around practice. I think you might have said it as well around most people. It's just keep doing it, keep trying it, try different things, see what works for you. And then whatever works for you, just keep at it, keep going, and then you'll start to really, really sort of embed those benefits. But I'm going to apologise for multitasking, but I have just found you on YouTube as well. Thank you.
No, that's very nice. Yeah, I should say. So on YouTube, I've got I stayed away from meditations because unfortunately YouTube now has this thing where they just add advertisements to all the videos that do well. So you're not in control anymore. And if you do a meditation and then all of a sudden have you heard of the latest water? It's not working. So there's a lot of physical stuff on my YouTube channel. I also have an online subscription platform where I'm starting yoga training as well, where I go into the mythology and the philosophy of yoga, but I always bring it back to the neuroscience and the quantum physics and epigenetics, because all of these, I feel that there's a lot of knowledge that was lost, and the way that the ancient yogis were saying things is exactly what the latest science is catching up with now. But yeah, one thing I also wanted to say that you just mentioned, just keep going. And one of the things that I always get when I have a program of making people more focused, through mindfulness, for example, is that people say this is so boring, and I'm like, yes, that is that's exactly what I want. That is what success looks like at the beginning, because we are not used to being bored anymore. The moment you're bored, you grab your phone and you scroll through Instagram or whatever. We do not get bored anymore because we have our phones. We don't just look around. We don't just do nothing anymore. And the brain needs that. It needs that reset. And that's why we do what we do, right? So yeah, sometimes we think it doesn't work, but that's the sign that it's working. Any other?
Thank you. Have we got any last questions for Basanti? Otherwise, I think as we're kind of a few minutes over, we'll close it there. But Thank you so much for that. I think you've reminded us all of some good practices that we need to take, and to be kind to ourselves a little more. I love that as well, and to be kind to others too. So thank you so much for sharing. We'll stop the recording there, Helen. And yeah, thank you. Please do